Good afternoon. I'm Cashion Drolet. I'm the lobbyist for the South Carolina Realtors, and I am pleased to present to you the last of our webinar series for 2012 or 2011, which is a preview of the 2012 legislative session. South Carolina Realtors are very involved in what goes on down at the South Carolina State House. The challenges faced in this industry are many, and the legislative committee leadership and staff of the association are prepared to meet those challenges head on, both at the federal and at the state level. I am the chief lobbyist for the state association, and I work down at the State House advocating issues and positions of the South Carolina Realtors. The framework for our legislative agenda every year is quality of life. It's the metric that the association leadership and legislative committee use to decide which issues we're going to work on. They all relate back to quality of life. Are we protecting private property rights? Are we creating economic development opportunities, job creation? Are we creating housing opportunities, protecting the ability of folks to use, own, and freely transfer property? And are we building better communities? Those are all issues that we look at that we think that make quality of life in South Carolina what it is. So every issue that we work on has to pass that quality of life test. Does it make South Carolina a better place to work and live? We have an aggressive agenda planned for 2012. 2012 is going to be an interesting year down at the General Assembly. It's an election year. The entire House and the entire Senate are all up for re-election. That's 170 seats that are all up for re-election. Candidates will file for those seats in late March, the 2-week filing period, followed by a June primary and an election in November. That tends to put sort of a kink in things down at the State House. Legislators tend not to want to do whole lot before the filing period, before they see who may be running in a primary or a general election against them. So we are up against some great odds this year, and the legislature is in a posture, I think, to make it a challenging environment to move any agenda forward. The legislative committee met yesterday, and they assisted staff in ironing out the priorities for 2012. The number one issue for the association in 2012 will be professionalism in the real estate industry. It is part of the association's very aggressive strategic plan that we raise the bar for professionalism in the real estate industry, providing consumers with the most highly educated, highly trained individuals to aid them through what is the largest financial investment that most South Carolinians will ever make in their lifetime. The strategic plan for the association calls for improving both the quality of the education that licensees receive, both to get the license and to keep the license, but also focusing on the quantity, putting folks in the classroom more. The association's update of the Real Estate Practice Act. The Real Estate Practice Act is the license law that tells you which hours you have to have for pre-post licensing continuing education. So we're proposing a massive overhaul of the Real Estate Practice Act, really focused on that aspect of education that I referenced. The association is proposing a doubling of hours pre and post licensing, having new licensees get some documented field experience, attend a listing presentation, attend a closing, so that they have some real-world practical experience from which to draw when they're serving their own clients. We want to make the quality of the education better, change the course approval process, the instructor approval process, have courses that are relevant to the work that you do, the current market, trends in the real estate market, have those count towards your continuing education, which we are also proposing to double. It's currently at 8 hours. We would propose that it go to 16 hours over a 2-year period. We also want to improve the way that the Real Estate Commission interacts with its licensees, the way that it serves its licensees. The Real Estate Commission is the largest group of professionals licensed down at the LLR, which is the umbrella agency for the Real Estate Commission. It brings in the most revenue. Your license fees bring in the most revenue to the LLR, and we'd like to give the Real Estate Commission, empower them to set their own budget, which they don't do right now. They get that budget handed down to them from the LLR board. The Real Estate Commissioners actually don't set their own budget. So we would like to empower them some to improve the services that you receive, the inspections, being able to call the Real Estate Commission, get somebody quickly, have somebody who's responsive, dedicated staff attorneys, dedicated investigators, all those services that you deserve, that you pay for. We would also propose criminal background checks for all licensees, not only from a SLED perspective, but from an FBI perspective as well, to ensure that we have quality people who don't have a criminal background interacting with members of the public. And that is the rewrite of the Practice Act is the priority for the association going into 2012, and something that we're excited about working on. Concurrently to SCR's work on the Real Estate Practice Act, the South Carolina Real Estate Commission has also been working on an update on their end. And they approved a draft at their meeting in October. The changes that they propose and the changes that SCR are proposing are by and large very similar, and we are working to make our two versions of updating the Practice Act a little more seamless, so that we can go down to the General Assembly together and work on and present a unified front. Next on the issue list is taxes on fees on real estate. We made, in the area of property tax reform, we made some great progress in 2011. We passed, I think, a very strong point of sale assessment reform package in 2011. It is by no means the fix-all for the property tax issues we have in South Carolina. We have a lot of work to do to bring equity to the property tax system, and to, frankly, to attract jobs, to attract investment in our state. Property tax reform is a strategic plan agenda item for the association. But again, with it being an election year, I don't feel very strongly that the General Assembly is of a mindset to move on property tax reform or comprehensive tax reform. And it's certainly incumbent upon the members and the leaders of the South Carolina Realtors to force their hand on that. Going into 2012, we're looking at about $1 billion of surplus in the state budget. There are lots of agencies and groups that will be clamoring to take advantage of that $1 billion. The Governor Haley, has stated that she's publicly stated she does not want to use that money to fund programs. That she wants to use that money to put back in the hands of taxpayers. So the work is clear for the association that we need to lobby the General Assembly aggressively on using that $1 billion to enact some property tax reform, to bring some additional equity to all classes of property. The sort of the wild card that's out there right now is a case pending before the South Carolina Supreme Court, whereby the Bodeman case, whereby a private citizen brought an action against the state, stating that the General Assembly does not have the constitutional authority or ability to impose the sales tax exemptions. So anything from sales tax exemption on utilities to groceries to prescription drugs to sweetgrass baskets, all of those things are exempt from sales tax in South Carolina, and it's a very long list. But the oral argument was heard Tuesday in the Supreme Court, and so the lobbying community and the government affairs world is waiting with bated breath to see what the Supreme Court does with that. If they go and say that the General Assembly does not have the authority to impose the sales tax exemptions, are they going to eliminate them? And if that's the case, we're going to end up with a lot of money back in the budget, which can be used to force the General Assembly's hand on comprehensive tax reform, property tax reform. So there's a lot of work to be done if the Bodman case, if the opinion rendered in the Bodman case overturns sales tax exemptions. So that is something that the association is monitoring extremely closely, because it will change the face of what happens in the General Assembly in 2012. We will shift into a total tax mode. Also, in the category of taxes and fees on real estate, we have a carryover bill that we didn't quite push over the finish line in 2011. This would be legislation banning private transfer fees. House Bill 3095 passed the House in February. Very easily passed the House in February, moved over to the Senate, where things tend to slow down and bog down. It was eventually pulled from the Senate Judiciary Committee, meaning that it wasn't heard in the committee, but the members of the committee signed a pull sheet stating that they would let the bill go on the floor without having been heard in committee. And that is a strategic lobbying maneuver that we were successful in getting, and to push the bill to the floor. We got the second of three readings that are required on the Senate floor by a vote of 42-0. We got the third reading on the final day of the regular session, and through no fault of the merits of the bill, it got hung up over some procedural maneuvers in the Senate that were political in nature, had nothing to do with our bill, and in fact every bill on the Senate calendar that had originated in the House got hung up. So we'll early in the session this year, session starts January 10th, your lobbying team will be working hard to push that bill just a little bit further than it needs to go to get it to the finish line, so that we can focus on new business for 2012. Under the heading of business issues, we'll be working on a slight tweak to the commercial lien law that was enacted in 2006. The commercial lien law, as it stands currently, allows for a commercial broker to file a lien within 90 days of the completion of the work, which has posed a problem in a number of commercial scenarios where the completion of the work, which has previously been interpreted as the signing of the lease, where the lease is signed for a project that's under construction or a commercial upfit, and there's a greater period of time, longer than 90 days, in between when that lease is signed and when the tenant actually moves in. So we would add into that commercial lien law 90 days within completion of the work or tenant occupancy, as a cleanup piece for that legislation that was passed in 2006. On the environmental issue front, we are working in a coalition with the greater business community on an opinion that was rendered in the Supreme Court this summer. In the Smith Land Company opinion, the Supreme Court took a very broad interpretation of the state's Pollution Control Act. What occurred was the Smith Land Company went to the Department of Health and Environmental Control, and which is the state regulator, and they went to the Army Corps of Engineers, which is the federal regulator, and they said, we want to fill 2/10 of an acre. It's an isolated wetland. We need a permit. Both of those bodies, the Army Corps and DHEC, said, we don't have a permit for isolated wetlands. You don't need a permit. Go ahead and fill. So the Southern Environmental Law Center brought an action against the Smith Land Company for failing to get a permit on behalf of another citizen, and the case went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court issued an opinion, and there are two parts of the opinion that could have a extremely chilling effect on economic development and job creation in the state. The first part is this broad interpretation of the Pollution Control Act, where they said essentially any emission into the environment is a permittable occurrence. Any emission could be seepage, drainage from watering your lawn, and seepage and drainage from chemicals that you put on your lawn could go into a river system. Emission, I'm breathing out carbon dioxide right now. That's technically an emission. Car emits fumes when you drive down the street. These are all now permittable occurrences under this interpretation of the Pollution Control Act. That's the first piece of the decision. The second piece of the decision allows a private citizen a right of action to bring a lawsuit, litigation, against another citizen for an environmental hazard when they may not even be directly affected. the association will pursue legislation in 2012 to bring us back to even, to get us back to where we were before that decision was rendered, so that we're back where we were in terms of being able to attract business to our state and have a more clear-cut permitting process, which this really clouded the permitting process in South Carolina. That's a quick sort of smattering of the issues that we'll be working on in 2012. None of this is possible without the involvement of you, the association member. You make it all possible. Your grassroots involvement in the association is critical to the association's success and to the work that I do down at the State House. Attending legislative rallies, we'll have a State House rally March 27th, where we will gather at the State House. We'll go into the lobby, talk with legislators about issues affecting your business, and we'll gather for a barbecue luncheon on the State House grounds, where you'll have an opportunity to talk with legislators in a little bit less formal setting than inside of the State House. Calls to action: when you get an email from me asking you to contact your legislator, it is incredibly important that legislators hear from realtors en masse. I send the call to action when there's a timely issue of importance to the association's legislative agenda, asking you to ask your legislator to vote a certain way. These are very helpful to the lobbying effort, and it really takes 3 clicks of your mouse to do it. So I would encourage you to continue responding. Once you respond, ask your colleagues, agents in your office to respond as well. Next summer, we'll have a series of legislative forums around the state, at least one per region of the South Carolina Realtors, where the association is divided into 7 regions. I'd ask you to attend one of those forums. This is a way for you to have direct input into the association's legislative agenda, advise us of the issues that are affecting your business, your ability to prosper, your client's ability to own, use, and transfer their property. And with that, I'd conclude my report. I thank you for your involvement in the association. I thank you for the opportunity to lobby for this association. It is certainly my pleasure. I love the work that I do, and I love the quality agenda items in which the association engages itself. And I am excited about 2012, excited about the great work that we're going to do to make South Carolina a better place to live and a better place to work. And I think at this point, I'm happy to take questions from our audience, if there are any. Do we have any yet? Wait to give you guys a second to ask any questions if you need to. Seeing any questions yet? Well, I don't see any questions. I thank you all for participating. We have someone typing right now, so I'll wait for a second for this question. But if anything pops up into your head, a question at any point, you can always email me. My email address is Cashion, CASHION, at screaltors.org. That is the best way to reach me. I'm fairly on top of my email, so you should receive a response from me within hours of sending your email. And I can always be reached at the office, which is 803-772-5206. I don't think we have any questions. Casey, you're welcome. Thanks for the compliments. So we're going to conclude. Thanks, everybody, for participating today, and I look forward to a great 2012.
Have a nice day.